Hey everybody, Mike Soto here, Full Contact Concepts. I'm making this video to try to address the frequent questions that I've been getting from both students in Asia and Thailand and in the United States regarding specifically to drilling and real world usage on knife. So knife training. So I would like to say this is one man's opinion, and my answers and my opinions are based on my own personal experiences. Also, a consensus between speaking to members of the older generation that are from places of the world that they're bladed cultures. There are cultures that utilize blades to settle scores, or in bad places where this is often an occurrence. There's been a lot of information I've gathered from these folks has been very, very important to me. Also, from speaking to soldiers that fought under those conditions in the bush with machetes or things that had to do with bladed weapons. Speaking with criminals that also have used bladed weapons as their main weapon to terrorize and commit crimes. Also, clandestine operators that also have resorted to blade work in order to do a lot of their work, depending on, again, what they were doing. Gang members that have a lot of cool stories on how they ended up having knife fights or facing knife or been in jail because of knives. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence also that can't be ignored. So I'm coming from that point of view. It's just one man's opinion, right? So one of the first things that I get asked is, how do the drills transfer into real world usage? So I can tell you that drills, of course, are important in any martial art, because from drills you learn a lot of the attributes needed for you to perform. So, you learn flow, speed, angle recognition. You learn how to attack angles. You learn how to flow from one movement to the next. You learn footwork. I mean, there's a lot of attributes that you will extract from these drills. Now, however, some drills might be more realistic than others, and there's a lot of drilling that you do as you get better that's more like play. It's intricate, and it goes from one move to another move to another move. And again, these are things designed to increase your ability to wield the knife or the weapon, whatever that may be. It doesn't always necessarily mean that that's what you're going to do in the real world or in a real life situation, because it's very contextual. So there's a lot of drills that are also extremely, extremely not realistic and will be applicable in the real life situation, because it doesn't mimic it at all. Again, you have to be careful. So the main issue here is, if a teacher can distinguish this and tell the students the big difference between what the drilling is and what fighting is or might be, depending on your definition of real world violence. Because I've had many, many, many years of talking to people and seeing people in different classes and different instructors that have a misconception that because they have 100 ways of attacking and defanging angle one, that they have some kind of fighting skill. Now, again, I'm not speaking badly towards anybody. It's just, we talk about real is real. So in my opinion, in my experience, from all the information I've been able to gather, things are not quite black and white that way, right? I mean, you would expect them to be. So to answer the question, it's contextual. Everything is about context. So drilling is important, and you must have it, especially building blocks. Now, there are some drills that as you get more advanced, then it'll get more complicated, more complex, fun to do. I mean, again, it really enhances your abilities. Now, with that being said, I also believe that drilling at first, after the student learns the basics, they should learn drills that are universal in the sense of, you should focus on things that are going to work under high pressure with a variety of opponents, because all these things start coming into play. A lot of the drills that you do, you'll see the person, we're drilling and I'm passing, I'm cutting, I'm coming in, there's a response, I'm back, you're coming in. There's a lot of back and forth that you learn that is not going to translate well into real world usage. Once somebody comes at you with a weapon like this and they're coming this way, coming that way, coming in, it's and they're moving around and they're not staying still. This then turns very differently. So what do you do then under those circumstances? So I think that one of the mistakes that some people do in drilling is that they don't drill the basics. And I'm not saying go balls to the wall. I'm saying learning the basics of high pressure techniques. And what I mean by that is not to fight under high pressure, although you will in time simulate that. What I mean is this: you may have a technique where the opponent, I don't know, he thrusts at you. So I'm responding to the thrust, I cut, I pass, then I hold the arm, and then I do my whatever other techniques might work. These things don't translate completely well once you have somebody that's coming at you 100 miles an hour, especially if they have a weapon themselves in the hand. So because this person is going to be very reactive. When you do a lot of drills and you're with your partner doing drills here, you both are barely moving. You are in a static position while you can work each other's moves. This is not very applicable in real life, because you should be able to start addressing the issue of, well, how can I as quickly as possible? Because when you have somebody in front of you that wants to harm you, and no matter what, they're not going to leave there until they hurt you very bad or killed you, right? Again, we're talking about these extreme situations. And I'm in no way trying to say, hey, murder is good. I'm not promoting murder or things like that. I'm addressing these issues when it comes to real world usage, the comparison between these two things, the context. So as I was saying, if you do a very fine-tuned movement where you've got, for example, one of these moves, you got the guy over here, you move him, and then you cut him and you get him out of position, and then you come in for the kill or whatever it is. These things don't tend to work very well once you have one of these swinging at your face, coming 100 miles an hour with somebody that's yelling bloody murder. It doesn't work like that. So this person is alive and moving. They're not going to sit there. Even if you reposition their hand, even if you defend the snake and reposition the hand somehow, they're not going to be sitting in there like when you drill. Obvious, right? So we have to address this, I think, when it comes to drills, introducing the students early on, after they learn the baby steps and the angles and the basics, to try to do, for example, in that example that I gave you, like somebody comes around a common strike, somebody coming in with a swipe coming at you. We have, of course, if we're on the outside, we have passes. If we're on the inside, we have blocks. We have pass and slashes. We have all these things. But whatever it may be, if I'm going to pass him, if he's coming at me from this angle and I'm going to pass him and I pass him, I don't want to get into pass, cut, pass again, grab. These things, because the minute that you pass and you do something, this other person, if you even cut him, some guys don't even feel it. A lot of things happen. What kind of clothing do they have? Do they have a thick jacket? Did you try to defend the snake when they have like a denim jacket or some kind of leather jacket? Or what if you went for the pass and you were both sweaty and your hand slipped? This happens all the time in training. You go for the technique and something happens and your hand slipped because you have sweaty skin. What if your hands are small? People with smaller hands, in training, they do this and they'll have a hard time redirecting or placing their hand in places that they should. So they have to rely more on body weight and a bigger area to move the opponent's arm. All these things play into it. So what I'm getting at is that you have to address the issue that under fight or flight conditions, when you're like in oh shit, you know, there's different attacks. It could be an ambush attack. Somebody just comes in, right? It could be somebody that in this situation they got heated, and now somebody took out and brandishing their weapon, and then you're gonna take yours out. It turns into some kind of duel, which, well, you don't want to do this, right? That's the worst scenario there is. I mean, they're all bad, but dueling is not a good thing, and we can get into that later. So there's so many different factors that drilling is not going to take you there. So unless you start modifying and creating the drills or applying them in a sense that you can do this under more simplistic, high pressure moves. So instead of coming in, and this is an example of many, there's many, okay? So I'm not, hey, this is what you do. This is an example. Instead of doing a finesse technique where I'm passing, I'm cutting, and I'm rearranging, and I'm trying to shove around, then I can, the minute that I pass, is you stab the face, because stabbing the face, once this goes in somebody's face, there's a big difference on how the fight turns over from there. So again, it sounds violent, but oftentimes, and I'll get into the defending the snake here in a second, you know, you pass, you thrust right away. Once you thrust and hit, you pass the hand. So once you pass the hand, if you just come in and pin right away, right? But you come in this way and you pin, and you continue to pin, your body weight is here. So his arm is pinned this way, and he's feeling your whole weight, you're crashing through. It's different that if he swiped at you, you make him miss, you press his hand here, the whole time he's got his feet. While this is happening here, this is what happens in training. We're training with each other and we're doing all these passes and all these cuts and all these thrusts, but the opponent's foot is, the feet is still, he has his balance. He still has everything about him is still fresh. You have to be able to, in realistic movements, when you move in with the blade, whether you're able to defang or not, is to immediately crash the line, whether straight, a linear, angular line, whatever line there is, you have to crash it and thrust or slash your weapon primarily or optimally to a target area that's going to cause a lot of damage. Not like cut the arm, then I come in for the thrust, because some people, they don't even feel when they get cut and they continue to fight. Again, you don't know what they're wearing. Some people get stabbed and they feel like they got punched and they're bleeding out, but before they bleed out, they can whoop your ass. So it all depends. This is why it's so practical to learn techniques that once you crash the line, you go immediately somewhere, whatever happens, you go to the face. Because when this is going to your face, when this blade or any other blade comes in, is going to your face, it can impale you. It will, this cutting into flesh going to the eye, whether it's the cheek, the throat, above the ear, anywhere. The minute you move and this goes in, whether it's from the inside, the outside, whatever I'm coming in, that is a practical high pressure technique because I'm coming in crashing the line. I'm crashing the line. I'm not passing, cutting, and staying put. The minute that we engage, I engage my frame. My frame is engaged, where my body now is touching your limb, and you're feeling my weight as I crush through with a very simple to the face blade work, right? So this is an example. Doesn't mean it's not the end all and be all, because there's a lot of things, a lot of nuances, but I'm giving an example of the difference between I'm going to pass, cut, come in over here while the guy still has his feet together. As opposed to I cut, if I'm touching you, I crash your line as I thrust. I keep driving you backwards. You get pinned, you get driven backwards while you're getting stabbed. So this is just an example of how some techniques may not work for a lot of people under this kind of pressure. One thing that I don't ever hear a lot of teachers talk about is, yes, fight or flight and all this kind of stuff, but once your heartbeat goes to 110, 115 beats per minute, you know, that oh shit zone, like, okay, the depending on how much experience, conditioning, how much you've got ingrained, this starts to deteriorate. Once you get to 110, 115 beats per minute, your fine motor skills or your fine-tuned movements start to go away. So what's going to really remain is your gross motor skills. So they should be also, I'm a staunch believer of anybody that does any kind of weapons work, especially edge weapons work, to work on drills, even from the very beginning, that address that issue. Because your fine-tuned moves may not be there for you, where gross motor movements and skills can, and they can be very efficient, which is, again, the difference between parrying and placing and pinning. Pinning uses all the surface areas, carrying your weight with it as you're doing your work, as opposed to placing and moving and passing. So pinning under pressure has an advantage for the things that I've talked about here. Now, you may or may not know this because maybe, you haven't had, and I hope you have not had episodes facing somebody with a blade. So I'm not saying that, for example, defanging the snake, I'm not saying that's no good. Defanging the snake, because this was another question that I had, defanging the snake became synonymous with Filipino martial arts once they became very popular, right? You have to attack the weapon hand, right? So you can then render him useless because his weapon, now he cannot hit you or harm you because you attack the hand. Important. It is. Don't get me wrong. But it works much better when you have long weapons, when you have a long range weapon, a stick or a sword. When you have a short blade in your hand, it's a bit more difficult. Can you do it? Yes. Will it work? It depends. I've had many an experience, and I've known many people that on the first swipe, they got the hand, the person, they felt the bite of the blade and they froze, and then, hey, the good guy won, right? But there's a lot of other times when you bite and the guy keeps coming. So there's a fallacy that, man, if you slice a guy, man, over here, it just opens and you'll see the gash to the bone. Yeah, but that doesn't mean to stop the person. You don't believe me? Go to the statistics and go to the people that really have real world experience. So I'm not saying defanging the snake is not good. You need to learn that, but you can't rely on it. But I'm saying you can't rely on it as your first line of defense, because to me, it's not necessarily true. It doesn't work that, especially when you start using the shorter blades, right? Knives and such. With longer weapons, it's much more plausible and works great because you can control more range. And you have a tip of the weapon, and you have some safety zones that you can then apply movements. But with the knife, because of the range and the clashing and the sudden entry, and you close the distance so quickly, too many things can go wrong. To go around and hit around and try to chase somebody, put them over here, and then strip them off the weapon. And when somebody's coming at you 100 miles an hour, especially if they have a weapon, man, it's very, very hard. So you still should know, because, not everybody's skillful. Somebody might be drunk. Somebody might be slow. You'll be able to strip them and not harm them anymore because you got rid of their weapon, and then you can subdue them. That's another context we can talk about, legalities. You get into a knife fight, it's a lot of context, because if you harm someone lethally, then you have to face the legal aspects. So that was from another question. We want to be able to diffuse, right? So you got to learn management skills to try to diffuse fights and try to prevent a fight from escalating. Any fight, really, especially if you suspect that weapons might pulled out, or you have to pull out your weapon and use it. So again, it all depends on the situation. So defending the snake, must learn it. It is a must. To rely on it as the first line of defense, it depends. And I've seen too many people, too many videos that say you first must do this. When the attack comes in, you first must defang the snake, then go in. And when things are going warp speed, man, and somebody's coming at you and the full intent is there and you're just trying to deal with this sudden rush or this high pressure situation, it doesn't always work that way. And it can even sometimes be detrimental. Again, I'm speaking from, again, the background and my own personal experiences. Again, I'm not trying to advocate violence here. But the reason I'm here today, being able to tell you about this stuff, is because I didn't defang shit. I'm being able to be here, and it wasn't because I didn't think of defanging it. There was no time for it. And I'm here today because I did something else. You do your thing and you go home. So these are all contextual things. You have to just keep all these things in mind. It's all part of the big picture. Disarming, kind of the same thing. Got to learn how to disarm. Disarm is important because if you get the superior angle and the superior dominance of that particular move or situation, or you put the opponent where he needs to be, and you can then disarm him, do so, because these are good things. We call them the drunken uncle techniques, right? Is things that you do that you can take the weapon away and then harm the opponent to a degree. It's how badly do you want to continue to hurt this person, or how much do you want to subdue him and make him come to his senses, or wait till the police gets there, right? It's a lot of things start coming into play. But so these things do offer a lot of other variations of what you could do once you get started with your movements, depending on how badly you want to continue to harm a person once you get the upper hand. So by all means, this is an important part of learning. And again, the attributes that you gain from it are going to be fantastic. But you don't rely on it. It's the same thing. You don't rely. It's something that will present itself if it's there. You don't go to try to disarm somebody. If it presents itself and the situation calls for it, you need to, know these skills and understand them, right? Or how somebody disarms you, right? You got to learn when things go wrong for you and what are your counters for that. So all this. So do not get me wrong. I'm not saying these are not good things and not important. Is that in the real world situations, the ones that we're specifically talking about, they're not the first line of attack or defense. It becomes much more important to me, the ability to crash lines, maintain the body in one piece, and being able to attack a vital area as quickly as possible, and maintain pressure. So that's all I'm saying, that we should also, hand in hand, along with all this other cool stuff, neat things that we're learning, understand how this works from the beginning once the student is capable of doing it. Okay, so in terms of run fu, I got another question about run fu. Running, right? Hey, somebody pulls out a blade, run. Hey, I'm with you, right? Run fu, if I can do it, I'll do it. But here's the thing, context again. What if you're with your wife, you're with your child? What if you're accompanied by somebody, a loved one that can't run? Your grandma, right? Or grandpa, what if they can? You're not going to run and leave them there, right? You're going to have to face the music. So in those instances when you can diffuse and you can run by all means. But even when you run smart, because there's been plenty of evidence, real world statistics that happen all the time when somebody's running, and while they're running, the bad guy runs after you and he's stabbing you in the back while you're running, right? So you got to run smart, always, almost like a crab. You run and, always looking back, not always giving full back, because this happens. So running, it all depends, right? What situation? What's the context? What's happening? It depends. There's been times when more than once, and you can check, one guy that talks about this a lot for many years has been Tim Larkin. He's been talking about this for a long time, and it's true. He talks about the statistics and things that happen in the real world. These things are real. You can research these things for yourself. There are people that have gotten stabbed and punctured during knife fights, and they've fallen, bleeding out. The other person walks away from the situation, and the guy gets back up before he bleeds out, runs after the other guy, and kills him. Like, dude got up like Jason or Freddy. These things happen, so you got to be careful, right? It's all contextual. So running is an option, but you also have to look at the situation as a whole. And if you run smart, right? If you can run, then you got to put your skills into play, because then when you're also trying to not only defend yourself or protect yourself is the word, and you have someone else to protect, that's another complication, right? So you got to know how to do things. Time matters. That's why, especially when the blade gets pulled out, time matters. You have to be able to do things very fast, very quick, get in, get out. The longer you prolong a situation, the worse the odds become for you. And you have to understand this. And this is pretty much in any kind of fighting. So you have to be careful, especially when it comes to pulling edge weapons. This is very, very important. Another question that I get is about instructors and the relevance of real world experience versus not. So I'm not saying that an instructor has to have experience killing, maiming, stabbing humans, edge weapons fighting out the yin yang, have to have a real world violence background for years and years to be able to be the best teacher or teach people very solid skills. I'm not saying that. But with that being said, there's also something to say for the people that have had that experience many times, right? Horrendously pressured situations, and they know how to put a blade inside a body, take it out multiple times from different areas. There's times when, depending on how sharp the knife is, how easily can it do damage? How some knives you have to pull out. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play here that a person that have had these experiences and have had, unfortunately, the experiences of using a blade on another human being lethally. Unfortunately, as bad as that is, it also can play a role on how knowledge is transmitted to students, because they will, of course, get a perspective that other people don't have with these weapons. So it depends on how you look at it. I mean, this is pretty obvious. It doesn't also mean that the guy that's killed more people or have used it so much more than this other guy that never used it is going to be the best teacher either, right? There's no guarantee. So it's all, again, back to context. It's all on how and what you're trying to accomplish. And all I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to make the point that you should look at things with a wide scope of view. These arts, because not only Filipino martial arts use edge weapon work, there's a lot of European countries and that have their own edge weapons systems, anywhere from Eastern Bloc countries, Spain, Italy. There are many places in the world that have, bladed culture based arts. But there's something to learn from all of them. And not everybody has to get into it to become a killer or to want to stab somebody or to want to slash someone. I'm not advocating that. I'm specifically answering questions in regards to this subject. But blade work can be a wonderful addition to any martial arts because of all the attributes that you learn that can enhance your performance in everyday life, even in other sports. It will transfer. I mean, and it's fun. You can have a lot of fun with it, and play safely. There's a lot of variety now of training tools that you can use, a lot of gadgets that are so cool to use, and you get a fantastic workout. You will eventually ingrain movements that could save your life, right? And depending how you implement this information, that you can always escalate it to make it a little more realistic. It's a wide variety, right? Especially in Filipino martial arts. There's many reasons to get into it and learn these things that don't have to do with finally, I want to be able to hurt another human being. And I'm not trying to promote that. Now, I do tend to get myself involved mostly with people that are involved in that aspect of the training. But it has something for everybody, so don't forget that. I'm not trying to say that people that have all the experience damaging other people with a blade are going to necessarily be better than a person who hasn't, but they do bring another perspective. Now, if you get someone that can instruct and has had that experience, well, hey, man, that's fantastic, right? But again, it all depends on how far you go, how much you research, how much are you willing to go into that subject and into that niche, right? Because it's only one aspect of things, right? Another aspect is mindset that's required to perform well and for you to actually be an effective knife fighter in the sense of real world violence. Usually somebody comes at you with a knife, which I say most because we're talking to statistics, but most predatorial attacks that come at you involve a weapon of some sort. So when you are supposed to be the victim, but when your response to that attack or that predator is that you are attacking the attack and you have the mindset that you're going to be the tiger pouncing on the rabbit. When you suddenly turn on that violence gear, right, that you just go in and you turn into a Tasmanian devil, it psychologically has an effect on the predator, and you will probably have better outcomes provided that you couldn't flee the situation. We talked about that a little bit a few minutes ago. So mindset is also very important. It's like in Muay Thai, right? I teach other arts. I teach Muay Boran, and Muay Thai and all kind of things. And these arts, they require you. I mean, originally they require you they have these things called the tiger walk, that there were psychological aspects that you train specifically because the art works so much better when you do get into that zone where you are the predator. You're the hunter. You came from being the rabbit to being the tiger. So similar things with weapons training. Not everybody has that in them, and there's a sliding scale. Some people have it in spades, some people don't have it at all. But to get in touch with that a little bit through training safely is not a bad thing, because it may serve you well under that time if the time should ever occur that you have to bring it out. Now, real world violence now, I mean, some people will have debates about this, but it seems like the world's getting worse and we're having more and more violence. Some places in the world are more about blades than guns. So yes, I suggest that you should at least be familiar with your firearms, right? But if you don't have them, if you can't get to your firearm, if you don't have ammunition, anything that happens that you cannot use it, these weapons, these edge weapons, whether it's a knife, a sword, Heck, it could be a cane, a machete, whatever. It will do you well to know and understand how to use them efficiently. Because some people say the way the world is going, you never know when this might flip a switch and we might be in Walking Dead territory, be like post-apocalyptic stuff happening around, right? I don't know. But either way, it's always good to at least understand the basics on how to use these weapon systems in case you shall ever need it. It's another tool that can benefit you in so many ways, like I said, not just for violence, but physical, mental, some people spiritual, right? Depending on how you approach it. So it's something that you should think about. Okay, guys. So I hope that I was able to answer a little bit more detailed. There's a lot of stuff. As you can see, it's a highly contextual and wide scope subject. But I hope that I was able to answer some of the questions because I get a lot of questions that are the same through my DMs. And I wanted to kind of address some of these issues in a general sense to give you a better idea of my thought process on how these things go, specifically under the niche of knife fighting and how does the training could possibly translate to real world usage. So I hope this was of some use to you and you were able to get some information or inspires you to further look into this stuff. So feel free to DM me, send me an email. I said I love to answer questions. If I don't know the answer, I probably know someone that does, and I'll send you that way. So I hope to see you guys next time and more often. So take care.